Within the Five Eyes Alliance, Canada is the only country that doesn't have a devoted foreign human intelligence agency, and it's time for that to change.
Is it not true that if Canada were to have a foreign intelligence service, Canadians and Canadian policymakers would have to be comfortable with having a service that has, as part of its mandate, to engage in these kinds of covert activities to advance Canadian interests in other countries that, according to those countries, would probably not be considered legal?
That is correct. And I would even argue that even more important than that is that we would need to create a culture where Canadians become aware as to why that's necessary and become accustomed to it. My name is Rob Mendoza, and I am an academic who has been involved in Canada's security and intelligence apparatus for the last 2 decades. I have worked for approximately 9 to 10 federal departments and agencies, ranging from the Department of Justice to Public Safety Canada to the Privy Council Office, which is the bureaucratic side of the Prime Minister's office. And I was also the co-chair of the Canadian Association of Professional Intelligence Analysts for 5 years.
What's the difference between CSIS and a foreign intelligence service?
So CSIS is a domestic intelligence service that is mandated to look at domestic intelligence threats. Sometimes there are threats that may be transpiring abroad if there's a Canadian nexus or element to it. However, a full-blown agency like the Central Intelligence Agency is very different, where they actually are authorized to conduct operations abroad and around the world, where that's not necessarily the case with the service, which is truly a domestically focused intelligence security service rather than a full-blown agency.
A lot of people say that Canada needs a foreign intelligence service. What would that mean, and do you agree?
On a personal level, I think that we should have one, given the evolving geopolitical landscape, given the heavy hand that economics plays into national security and the well-being of Canadians and Canadian interests. So with the establishment of a foreign human intelligence agency, that would enable the federal government to authorize such an agency to conduct activities that would advance the interest of Canada and Canadians abroad. We wouldn't see the immediate benefits, I would argue, over the course of a 10-year period. You would really have to give something like this a lot of time, a lot of money to establish such an organization, establish its authorities, have people and personnel coming in and train them with a very different lens from that which you will currently find at CSIS. And you would also have to acknowledge that mistakes are going to be made within that 10-year time period. A lot of mistakes are going to be made. It would be also politically unpopular for any government to do so, because the benefits aren't immediate, and you can't immediately translate the benefits of that and convey them in a public manner. But there would be benefits there for Canada's interests, and from an economic perspective, I would deem it personally as something that is necessary. There are a lot of questions as to whether the establishment of such an organization should begin within the service or if it should be independent. My personal opinion as an academic is that it should be an independent thing, started with a fresh set of eyes, fresh training, and then that way you leave the processes and procedures that the service currently conducts separate, and you could run then 2 parallel organizations with their clearly mandated duties that are separated, that could collaborate and share information, but with 2 very distinct and separate mandates. And I think that again, my personal opinion is that where Canada's going and where Canada needs and finds itself in the world these days, that the establishment of a foreign human intelligence agency is necessary.
A foreign intelligence agency implies a more offensive role for Canada in the sense of going out and promoting Canadian interests abroad. Is that correct?
That's correct. Now, most of these operations will be covert. However, the political impact domestically will be overt. And one of the big issues is that there isn't enough education or literature or an understanding amongst the general population in Canada as to why something like this would be needed. So it would be very easy for it to be an unpopular political move. And I think that may be a part of the hesitation. Again, this is my personal take, but I think that's a large part of the hesitation as to why many governments have refused to undertake this, is because it's going to require a massive investment. A political government will not reap the benefits of the establishment of such an organization during their term in office. But for the long term, it's something that's necessary for our economic safety, viability, and for other national security purposes.
Tell me what a covert operation is.
A covert operation is an operation that's conducted where an individual or an organization that is subjected to an investigation is unaware that they are being investigated.
A covert operation in Canada would be considered legal. Is that correct?
That's correct. Under the CSIS Act, the service is authorized to conduct investigations that may pose a threat to Canada and Canadians or Canadian interests.
A covert operation somewhere other than Canada, would that be legal or illegal according to the country that it's taking place in?
That is a very loaded question.
I know.
A covert operation abroad, these situations are far few in between. It would require close scrutiny from the federal courts, from executive management, and that's why there is an argument and a case to be made why we need a devoted foreign human intelligence agency that has the legislative authority, a clear legal mandate as to how these operations would be conducted. You run into a sequence of issues. Do you inform the host nation that you're conducting a covert operation abroad? Canada typically would not be a country that would conduct an operation without the host nation's consent or knowledge. We're just not in a position like that relative to other nations, say such as the United States. So again, the establishment of a foreign human intelligence agency may help to facilitate and to address a lot of these issues. But it would really depend on what the circumstances are, what host nation it is that we're talking about, but all the more reason as to why we need to acclimatize the Canadian public with why some of these powerful resources and tools and organizations are necessary, especially in the current geopolitical context.
China, Russia, and Iran are involved in various different foreign interference and influence operations. True?
Yes.
Are any of those operations taking place in Canada considered legal by Canada?
No, those are illegal operations.
Would they be considered covert operations?
Yes, they would.
So my question is it not true that if Canada were to have a foreign intelligence service, Canadians and Canadian policymakers would have to be comfortable with having a service that has, as part of its mandate, to engage in these kinds of covert activities to advance Canadian interests in other countries that, according to those countries, would probably not be considered legal?
That is correct. And I would even argue that even more important than that is that we would need to create a culture where Canadians become aware as to why that's necessary and become accustomed to it. And I think that's where there has been a large hesitation politically to establish such an organization, because the knowledge just isn't quite out there. The comprehensive understanding by the general public just doesn't seem to be there in terms of why an organization like this is necessary, and why it would also position Canada in a better place on the global stage. It actually is a necessity at this stage, given how things are unfolding.
I can see the argument for why it's a necessity, but I'm wondering if it might also make Canada even more of a target.
I would argue that Canada's already a target, given our geographic location next to the United States, given the vast resources that we have that are becoming more and more critical. And I'm not just talking about critical minerals, I'm talking geographically, I'm talking about clean water, potash, other critical resources, and also access to the states, access to resources that are going to become more and more scarce in the next decade or so.
Can you give me any kind of concrete examples of the types of things that a foreign intelligence agency might be able to accomplish for Canada? Like a practical thing. Like, would it be about covertly trying to influence trade negotiations, or covertly trying to influence public opinion about Canada in another country, or covertly trying to support Canadian business interests in another country?
Yeah, precisely. A devoted foreign human intelligence agency could certainly assist to inform senior executives and decision makers in the government of Canada as to how to better position themselves during trade negotiations. But an organization like this could also help Canadian businesses abroad, even as something as simple as informing them that either the host nation or a third-party nation has penetrated their organizations and it is potentially stealing information, trade secrets, intellectual property information that belongs to that organization, and therefore it could derail and limit Canadian businesses and Canadian capacities abroad that overall impacts our economy and our interest and well-being.